Well, hooray for humanity, and welcome to Tom Rhodes Radio Smart Camp. And as my mom would say, yay us.
Yeah.
I love when you say that, Mom. How have you been enjoying our daily walks?
Oh, it's been great. It's an adventure to see what wonderful plants there are in the neighborhood.
That's the one good thing about this whole virus lockdown, that we got to experience and discover how many exotic, amazing plants there are.
Yes.
In my neighborhood. And
very surprising.
Yeah, and then it's funny, we're walking like through my park and in the neighborhood, and we know now that's a Monterey Cypress, that's an African sienna.
Yeah, we can really appreciate the exotic plants a little more.
And my favorite tree that we've discovered in the neighborhood, if you're in Los Angeles, it's on Martel Avenue between Beverly and Rosewood. There's an African tulip tree. And if you're not in Los Angeles, you can Google it. And I think it's one of the most beautiful trees I've ever seen in my life.
It is beautiful. And the flowers are 2 or 3 inches long, and it does look like a tulip.
Like beautiful red tulips on this tree.
Yes.
And it's just such a large, beautiful tree. We're going to have to go find that again soon.
Yes.
So one piece of business I need to let everybody know is on July 1st, Patreon sent me a message, and they're going to be charging tax for people. So I actually had to go through all the settings and put that everyone makes donations to keep the podcast going. So I think it's going to be the smallest tax possible, but hopefully that doesn't affect your wallet too much, other than a handful of cents. So I'm not sure what it's going to be, but just beware that starting January 1st, Patreon is going to charge tax. So
July
1st.
July 1st.
That's just in a couple days.
Okay.
And I got some lovely messages from Kate, who became a new subscriber, Andy in St. Simon's Island, Georgia. I want to thank Jason in Phoenix for his Kavita advice for something to sip for my throat while we record. And this is going to be a big week for us coming up, because you and I have not left my neighborhood in 4 months. And I've never gone this long without doing stand-up comedy. And I think we've done pretty well. Like this episode, we're going to talk. And here's another big news flash, is we have now reached the complete end of every art and educational DVD that I owned. So now the things we're going to talk about today are the last things that we want. I can't believe we went through every art and educational DVD that I had.
Yes, we haven't been bored.
And Wednesday, I'm going to rent a car, and you and I, the last week you're here, before you fly back to Florida, you and I are going to start taking some day trips around California. And our first trip, Thursday, we're going to go to the Sequoia National Park.
I hope it's opened.
I think it should be open.
Everything else seems to be opening up.
Yeah. And Ramy, who lives in Visalia, an old, loyal supporter of the podcast from the very beginning. Maybe we'll even get to stop by and have a cup of coffee and say hi to her. So we're really excited. Going to drive up the coast to Santa Barbara one day. Go see, they've got some gardens up there.
Oh, that would be great.
That travel thing that you get emails from. It was like best gardens in California.
Yes, I'm not sure where they got my name, but they keep sending me information. When you can travel, look at this.
So 2 of the top 10 gardens in California are in Santa Barbara. So we're going to take a little day trip. It's going to be nice to see the highway and the ocean, and
yes,
just
that would be really
trees
great.
whizzing past us. So we got a lot of information to give you today, and it's art and beauty and animals. So let's start with, we watched a DVD called Matisse and Picasso, and it was all about the rivalry and friendship of Matisse and Picasso. And I personally prefer Matisse, and I think you're not really crazy about either one of these guys, right?
Wouldn't want to say it too loudly, but yeah. But it was, they are great artists, and the DVD, I guess it's a DVD, showed the relationship that they had together and their painting styles. So they would go pretty fast, showing both artists' work. And they would discuss this one did that and that one did that, and it was fast moving.
So I like Matisse said, for me, drawing is painting with less materials. Yes. And then Gertrude Stein, the writer, her and her brothers were buying up all this art. She was a kind of a visionary on who had talent back then, and she's the one that wanted to get. Picasso did a painting of Gertrude Stein that's very famous, and then it was her idea to get Matisse and Picasso together. She thought it would be a clash of the titans. So they were kind of always compared in the media as rivals, and then later in life they had their exhibitions paired together. So there's always kind of a connection between Matisse and Picasso.
Yes, and they really were. It wasn't a clash when they met. They actually exchanged a painting. Each one gave the other one a painting, and they actually, I think, throughout their lives, they bought each other's paintings here and there.
They did, and I think there's a curious, strange thing about that. Was in Matisse's studio, he told Picasso he could choose whatever he wanted. Mm-hmm. And Matisse had just done a painting of his daughter, Marguerite, and Picasso chose that one.
Yes.
The guy kind of had a thing for young women, so I think that's... if I was Matisse, I would have said, you can have any painting but that one, you creep.
Well...
What do you think?
I think they... each one of them chose a very important painting to each artist, so that they could have something that they had done that was valuable to them. So, yeah, that painting was really a great painting that Matisse had done. But Picasso also gave him a really great painting of his. Now I don't remember exactly, but it was...
It wasn't of his daughter, I'm pretty sure.
No, it wasn't. But
my eyebrows would have been raised if I've got 100 paintings in my studio and you want the one I just did of my daughter.
Well, it was a really cool painting.
Okay.
They showed that.
So, Picasso... Matisse had spoken about... So they had a rivalry from the beginning, even though they were friends and they inspired each other. But Matisse had talked about bringing Picasso down. But then this...
Well, that was because Matisse was the leader of a whole group of painters. And the next thing you know, Picasso kind of took over the painters, and then he was the main leader. So then there was this rivalry. So that's when he said he was going to try to bring him down, but they never actually... did that. Well,
but it's interesting. So he says he wants to bring him down, but then this wealthy Russian guy, Stutkin, bought 20 of Matisse's paintings, and then the first thing Matisse does is he introduces him to Picasso. And then by 1914, Stutkin owned 51 Picassos.
Yeah.
So Matisse did Picasso this huge favor by introducing him to Russian moneybags who was buying up all this art at the time. What do you think?
I think, they had an admiration for each other, and in a way they were helping each other out.
Well, so, they kind of went back. I mean, an interesting friendship rivalry. I guess it was a friendly rivalry, but Matisse kind of always folded. Because later he becomes, I'm jumping ahead of the story, but he gets honored with the Carnegie Prize, which is the Nobel Peace Prize for art, and then he becomes a member of the committee, and the first thing he does is he makes sure that Picasso got the same award.
He did.
So as much as Matisse said in private, I want to bring this guy down, every chance he had, he lifted him up and did him a huge favor.
Yes. They definitely helped each other. It seemed like, things were happening around that time, too. In 1914, where they had the World War I, neither one of them fought. because Picasso was Spanish, living in France, and Matisse was too old at 45 in 1914. He tried to volunteer, but they turned him down. So neither one of them fought in that war.
I couldn't see Matisse as a soldier.
Well, maybe neither
Don't
one
we have
of
any
them
uniforms that are brighter? How about an orange and bright blue?
In 1918, they both had an exhibition together.
Well, in 1917, Matisse leaves his wife and children
Yes.
and moves into a hotel on the ocean in Nice. And I like that he arrived with his paint box, a violin, and a very small suitcase.
Yes, it was like he was a student cut loose, and he left everything behind. Kind of like he was taking a rest, though.
Well, I like that, some of these artists just abandoned everything to follow their dream. I mean, we're going to see shortly in the next war that Matisse, that's not always the best policy to have when you have a wife and kids, but
have some responsibility.
The guy just abandoned everything but his desire to go to the ocean and paint and play his violin.
Well, so at that time, Matisse was painting Oriental women in Paris. He would spend 8 months in Nice out of the year. And Picasso also was marrying different people. It was hard to keep track of all the ladies that he married.
Well, he married Olga, this Russian woman.
Russian, yes.
She was pretty, but she had bourgeoisie taste. Matisse was obsessed with painting female nudes and fabrics. And I liked the Matisse paintings of that time. But then when Picasso saw those paintings, he started doing parodies of them.
Yes.
And he was making fun of Matisse just to provoke him. So what kind of asshole friend is this? Did we forget about Stutkin and the 51 paintings?
Well,
that he bought because I introduced you to the guy?
It didn't seem like it caused too much of a rift. They still kept being friends. And Matisse at that time decided to travel to Morocco.
1930.
And Italy and the U.S. And in the U.S., that's when he got the Carnegie
Prize, yeah.
Yes, and make sure Picasso got a prize too. Then he goes to California and goes to Tahiti, like Gauguin, but he arrives just as they were making a film, Taboo, by Mono. And Mono takes a photograph of Matisse. I think I'd seen that photo before. And Matisse spends 3 months in Tahiti and is absolutely bored. He wrote desperate letters to people and was not inspired at all. Picasso didn't know how to drive, and he never left his studio.
Picasso didn't travel.
No,
that's an amazing thing. He liked to hang out in his studio.
Well, he could get inspired by anything. So at that point, he started, doesn't even use an easel. He used newspapers that were spread all over the floor. And Matisse was so different in his approach to painting, because he said when you want to use color, you can't just walk in without thinking about it. He hadn't stopped working for 50 years. He would work 9 to noon, take a nap, then work until evening. At the start of every season, Matisse went from Paris to Nice. And Picasso says that, Matisse said that objects were part of his vocabulary, where Picasso says that objects are all that was interesting to him, although 3/4 of the objects in his paintings were never existed. There were no bowls of fruit that ever existed in his paintings. Women were what inspired him. His memory, his observation, and he rarely asked people to sit for him. Matisse worked from models. It helped him to fix his
That's
attention.
interesting. Picasso did everything from memory. And Matisse liked to actually have nude models.
A person that
sitting
he
in
could
front
look
of him.
at, yes. And Matisse chose dark Latin models, and Picasso was more into the
The blonde Nordic
blonde,
types.
yes.
So 1940, World War II breaks out. The Germans are on the way to Paris. And once the Nazis take over, both Picasso and Matisse are branded degenerate artists.
Yes.
And this is when Matisse abandoning his family for the life of for the good of his art isn't so great, because Matisse learns, because he's living in Nice, he rented the top floor of this like hotel or apartment building that overlooked the ocean. So he's making money. He's got a sweet pad right on the ocean, and the Nazis come in and take over France. And Matisse learns that his wife is in prison and his daughter Marguerite is arrested for working for the resistance.
Yes. And it seemed to me like the video was making excuses for Matisse when they said that we're not beaten if we still can create and bring forth harmony, which may seem impossible at such times because he was still painting. If you can create it on canvas, it's a victory. Or you can say that he was insensitive because he absolutely did nothing about his wife in jail and his daughter also arrested. So
yeah, he looks.
I'm not
he
sure
looks
what
like a kind of a weak person there. But I took that differently. That we are not beaten if we can still try to create. To bring forth harmony might seem impossible in times of destruction. If he can paint it on a canvas, it's a victory. And I thought that, like, for times like now where, there's so much anxiety and, I'm out of work. I don't know. I think the majority of people have a lot of anxiety and stress right now. I think, for me, the key to happiness is being creative. So I thought, imagine the Nazis in World War II and everything was uncertain at that time, that if you could stay focused and be an artist and still create things, that it's a victory against evil and violence.
I would have liked for him to have at least tried to visit his wife or something. I mean, if you're starving, or say you're starving, I'm sure they weren't exactly starving, but they might have been. It doesn't say. But, like, if you're starving and somebody paints a picture, how does that help you? I mean,
I don't think they were starving. I mean, if he's got enough money to rent the top floor of a hotel apartment building in Nice, he's got enough money to help his family. So they just kind of breezed past that. We don't know if they wrote letters, if what.
Well,
but,
that's true. They did breeze by that.
We don't know what connections he used from being a famous artist to maybe get them out of jail or whatever. They just kind of breezed past that. But
yeah, they didn't even mention that part.
But he was not.
He
was not broke.
It didn't sound like he actually did anything other than to paint.
Yeah.
He just kept painting. Okay. Kind of heartless as far as I'm concerned, but
true.
I don't have all the puzzle pieces, so we can't judge about it.
Okay, so speaking of heartless, in 1943, Françoise Gillot walks into Picasso's studio, and Matisse's Bowl of Oranges is a painting that Picasso bought,
yes,
and he gave it a place of honor in his studio. And Françoise said that when she met Matisse, she told him how much she loved that painting. And Matisse told her that at the time that he painted the Bowl of Oranges, that he wanted to kill himself. He was unhappy in his life.
Wow.
So maybe he had, maybe he was conflicted that he was kind of a wimp and didn't do anything to help his wife and daughter.
Yeah, that could be true. He said his life was so difficult he couldn't see a way out. And then Picasso also said that he had thoughts of suicide. And he kept on and on about killing himself. And his wife at the time opened the window and said, "Okay, jump." And after that, he didn't jump, and he didn't talk about suicide again.
Yeah, that was Françoise Gillot. So I read this book a long time ago, and it's called Life with Picasso. And it's by Françoise Gillot. And the thing that I remember was, where is it? He was in his 60s, and she was 25. And he still screwed a few of her friends and was still screwing other people. So this book, she really, she lets him have it. And let me read you a couple little quotes from Life with Picasso by Françoise Gillot. I had seen how Picasso refused to throw anything away, even an old matchbox that had served its purpose. Gradually, I came to understand that he pursued the same policy with human beings. Even though he no longer had any feeling for this one or that one, he could not bear the idea that any of his women should ever again have a life of her own. And so each had to be maintained with the minimum gift of himself, inside his orbit and not outside. And then here's another cute little... That wasn't the only thing that didn't amuse her. Pablo would have preferred, at least when it was warm, to have me walking nude around the house and garden. For one thing, being at the beach so often, wearing the usual bikini, made me very tanned. But when I took off the bikini, there were white patches in one or two places, and Pablo found that unattractive. He suggested that if at home I walked around in and out of the sun without even my bikini, the damage would soon be repaired. Besides, he said, how do you expect me to put nudes in my paintings if I never see any? I pointed out that on occasion he did. Well, if I do, it's lying down. And if I want to paint a nude walking or standing, that's no help at all. Furthermore, it's important for me to see you nude outside the house in natural settings. Now, me growing up in Florida, I personally love tan lines. So I think that's another curious detail of what a creep Picasso was.
Well, it was a difficult husband for sure.
Difficult, yeah. You got a beautiful younger wife, and you're still trying to hook up with her friends.
He must have thought he was God's gift to women.
I think he did. So in 1945, after World War II, that's when there was the first joint exhibition in London of Matisse and Picasso, and in 1946 in Brussels and Amsterdam. 1946 is when Picasso joined Matisse in the south of France, and Picasso rents this Grimaldi Palace to paint, this massive place, and then he was surprised to see that Matisse lived in just a regular house. Mm-hmm. What do you have on that?
Well, let's see. 1948, Picasso joins Matisse in the south with a 25-year-old who is his new love.
Françoise.
At 70 years old, he's a father again, has two children, Claude and Paloma. Matisse has a new life, too, after he had cancer of the intestine operation. He can no longer paint. He's only out of bed for half an hour a day. He started making cutouts and memories of his childhood, underwater images, and always sees life as in a childhood. And at this point, Picasso was exploring ceramics, and he goes to visit Matisse. And they were excited to go visit him, although Matisse is in his bed. He doesn't look very sick, and they seem to be fascinated with each other's work.
And this is when Matisse gives him that ugly statue from the Pacific Islands. Right?
And he said he hated it, thought it was so ugly, and when he left, he forgot the idol and left it there.
Well, I like the story that Picasso gave Matisse a painting called Winter Landscape. And he kept wanting to get it back, and he kept asking to get it back. And Matisse told him, I'm not finished looking at it yet.
Yeah.
So he kept.
I don't know if he ever get it back or not, but he may not have. At some point, Picasso, when he went to visit Matisse, Matisse was working on a project that was a church.
Matisse made a chapel.
Yes,
it's in the south of France, and I've always wanted to see it. Excuse me, and it's blue and yellow are the colors, and it looks like a small chapel. But I've always wanted to go there.
It took him 4 years to do it, and it looked as though Picasso did not approve of it very much because he was an atheist. but Matisse wanted it to be his work of art.
His masterpiece.
Yes.
So Matisse died on November 3rd, 1954, and Matisse's daughter, Marguerite, kept calling Picasso and leaving messages and telling him that Matisse had died, and Picasso did not return Marguerite's phone calls.
And he didn't even go to the funeral.
He didn't even attend the funeral. What an asshole.
Well, I'm not sure why he didn't do that. You know, they were supposed to be friends.
Yeah, that's kind of an asshole thing to do, wouldn't you say?
Pretty weird.
And the next DVD we watched was on... And this was an art DVD. We're not going to say that much about it because they didn't say very much about his life other than the fact that he was an urban sophisticate, is Eugene Delacriox. And his most famous painting is the national symbol of France, where it's from the French Revolution, and this woman is carrying a French flag, and there's the dirty-faced pistol boy next to her. And they didn't really tell us anything about his life. What did you learn from this?
No, they kept showing his paintings, which were really fantastic. He did lots of paintings with lions and tigers, and they were full of action and violence. One of his paintings, A Tiger Hunt, shows a man on a horse about to spear a lion that has attacked the horse. And on the ground is a man coming on foot to the rescue. It's very graphic, and it's beautiful, though, beautifully done. He made a lot of studies on lions. He really could paint animals very well.
He did a lot of action things.
Yes.
And then it's funny, like, he went to Morocco and North Africa, and he painted all these great things, and they kept referring to that style as Oriental, which I think is weird because it's North Africa.
Yes.
But I guess they referred to anything away from, the white European Empire as Oriental.
It was very Arabian, like he painted the Sultan of Morocco and the Crusaders coming into Constantinople. Arabs stalking a lion was one of his very famous paintings.
Listen to these titles of these paintings, and they're pretty dramatic. They're pretty cool.
They're beautiful.
So I just wrote down the titles because I thought they were so interesting. Arab stalking a lion. The Lion Hunt on horseback. Horses coming out of the sea. Lion mauling an Arab. Lion stalking his prey. Lion devouring a rabbit. They said that was one of his most famous paintings. Lion devouring a rabbit. Bathers or Turkish women bathing. The Tiger Hunt. Arabs traveling. Young woman attacked by a tiger. Tiger growling at snake. Arabs skirmishing in the mountains. Lioness ready to spring. He's buried in Père Lachaise in Paris. I've actually been to his grave, but I don't know much about the guy other than his action paintings.
Pretty exotic scenes and untamed landscapes. His later paintings are the most famous. They were admired the most. And he, was all these exotic outfits of
robes
Arab
and clothing
people.
And sashes.
Yes.
With
it really made
swords
an impact.
And turbans.
His trip to Morocco made I guess he painted like that for the rest of his life. It seemed like to have made a giant impact on his paintings.
Well, once you start painting lions, it's hard to paint anything else, I guess.
Well,
it's hard to go back to fruit bowls.
Exotic stuff. It was wonderful, though.
Yeah, and the next DVD we watched was on Toulouse Lautrec, which I knew him as like a French illustrator, and you always see these posters of him that he made for different shows and nightclubs in Paris. And I have a great album cover, and it shows Toulouse Lautrec, and he's a little guy, and he's very well dressed, and he's talking to two street prostitutes. That's the cover of this. My friend Nick in Chicago bought that album for me and mailed it to me.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, it's right over there behind the player. I have it displayed. So I didn't know much about the guy.
Well, I knew that he had some kind of an accident when he was young, and so he didn't grow the way he should have. So he was
And that's weird, because I've never heard of an accident stunting someone's growth.
We should have looked that up.
Yeah.
I don't. They definitely did not mention other than he was handicapped, and they showed how short he was compared to the rest of the people.
He didn't look that short, and he had this hang up, and the photos. I mean, like, he just looked like a medium-sized guy. I think
He was pretty short, though.
Prince was 5'2". He looked like...
No, I think he was shorter than
Okay,
that.
well,
Well,
he sure used it as an excuse.
well, he may have. He was born to a guy in born in 1864 to a count and countess. And the father had a passion for hunting. He was close to his mother his whole life. And she financially supported him throughout his life.
He was a mama's boy. I like that.
Well,
That's the one good thing about the guy.
well, I'm not sure that's a good thing. His mother separated from his father at some point. It didn't say exactly when. And in 1882 to 1885, he developed his own style. He participated in observed life in the village, seemed to be fascinated by the lifestyle of disrespectable women.
Just, yeah.
Yep.
Women of ill
Bars,
repute.
Yes. And
So he, in 1866, Van Gogh moved from Antwerp to Paris to live with his brother Theo, who ran a gallery in Paris. And then he became friendly with Toulouse Lautrec, and Toulouse Lautrec actually did Van Gogh's portrait in 1887.
Yes.
So he's hanging around all these places, the Moulin Rouge and other. Before Moulin Rouge, there were other places where they had bawdy shows and women of questionable character. And he was a big drunk. And he liked to drink absinthe, and he liked to hang out with prostitutes. How else can we say this? And
Yeah, they said because of his disability, he went with prostitutes, and they became his models.
well, but they showed that I don't think he had. I mean, other than the fact that his mother was his closest person, I don't think he had much respect for women. So they said that men became his closest friends, that he would rely on for intellectual stimulation and conversation, and
Yes.
women were just for sex and painting.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, and then he even lived in brothels for a while. So here's a guy who kind of only painted prostitutes and lived in brothels for a while, and it's the exact kind of story you want to watch when you're with your mom.
Good grief. Well, it's not the kind of story I want to watch when I'm with you, too.
No, I was being sarcastic, Mom.
Well, and at
Because
the end,
I'm waiting for an art thing, and then they're showing the guy's life, and I'm like,
well, they're
oh
showing
God.
all his art, plus, they throw in all these little tidbits on the side. And he seemed to suffer hallucinations from all his drinking at the end of his life.
Yeah, he did. Another curious fact is
yeah.
Theo Van Gogh sold Toulouse-Lautrec's work.
Yes,
So he could never sell any of his brother's stuff.
right.
So, I mean,
He
that must have
tried.
irritated Van Gogh, the fact that, Van Gogh was a very religious guy. And then here's Toulouse-Lautrec, who's a hedonist, and his stuff is selling. And then he was such a out-of-control alcoholic in years of absinthe, and that stuff used to make people go blind and crazy. In 1897, Toulouse-Lautrec shot his revolver at imaginary spiders, and that's
pretty
when his
bad.
friends put the clamp on him and decided to do an intervention. And he died in his mother's arms in 1901 at the age of 36.
Good grief, can you believe that?
Wow.
What a wasted life. Well, anyway, he was more famous after he died than while he was alive.
Any thoughts on Toulouse-Lautrec?
No.
Okay, good. Then the next DVD we watched, and I've had this one for a long time. I don't know where I got it, and it was on Antonio Guadi, the architect from Barcelona, and it was kind of a strange film because there was no talking, And I mean, I'm saying for the first hour of this film,
Yes.
they didn't say a single word, and they just showed his creations.
The movie was done by a Japanese person in 1984, and it just showed Guadi's work from outside and from inside. He just had music, and hardly anyone spoke. And I'm guessing because the work was so unique, the director felt like it would speak for itself. You couldn't describe his work. The movie showed beautiful stairways, lots of circular designs on cement, undulating roof lines, pillars at odd angles, and he seemed to have the most beautiful ceilings in all the buildings that he did. His ceilings were like works of art. Most of the walls were white, although they showed one interior with bird paintings that were beautiful. You couldn't have regular furniture in his house. They would look so out of place, I would think. And they showed one where there was circular arches in this big room where there was a big table and chairs, very modern looking. I think it must have been a business. Of course, they didn't say anything.
Now, I've been to Barcelona twice, and I've been to the park. The Guadi Park is actually very cool, and the tiles and kind of animal formations, and I actually have an ashtray I bought in Barcelona. It's a Guadi Park ashtray because I'm fancy like that, and I've collected weird souvenirs. And the first time I went to Barcelona, I had met this Palestinian girl who was from Barcelona, and I stayed at a hotel above the train station, and I could see the Sagrada Familia church from my hotel window. and I tried to walk around it, but they had, the boarded up construction barriers, and there was still the large cranes over it. Now, I think it's an interesting church, and there's not. I think it's a significant thing for Barcelona, but you're not that crazy about that church, are you?
Well, it's so different. He started it in 1882, and they did say a little bit about it, which was before he started working on the church. He fasted for 20 days, and so he was so weak he had to be pulled out of bed. He wanted the making of this building to be his masterpiece. And so he was making up for the lifestyle of his youth by building this church, which would be his masterpiece. And he made a model of the church, but after he died, and with the Civil War, the Spanish Civil War, the model was destroyed.
After he died, the Spanish Civil War broke out.
Yes.
And the fascists broke the model. And, Franco and the fascists took over Spain, and they thought it was, they didn't like this style of art, and they were not enthusiastic about this church being completed, so they broke the model to it. So many years later, after the Civil War ended in Spain, when they finally got their shit together and money was raised so they could keep the construction going of the church, they had to painstakingly put together this smashed model that Guadi had made. They put it back together like it was a jigsaw puzzle so they could figure out how to get the construction of the church back going. I didn't know that little tidbit.
Yeah, that was interesting. But it was strange watching this film with no one speaking. But I don't see what you could compare it to. There was nothing you could compare it to.
No, it was a strange film that.
But it was beautiful. I mean, his work was really interesting. Lots of ceramic tile work.
But it would have been nice if they would have given some kind of narration about the life of the guy, what he went through,
what he was trying to do with his art,
right? Or why the melty looking church? Why does it look like a popsicle in the sun?
Like the roofs were very different. He always seemed to have spires at different heights. So, just starting the roofs was a whole different way of looking at things. He had a whole different way of looking at things, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I might not like. I like the Guadi Park, and I think that the Sagrada Familia Church. I don't want every church to be made like that, but one in Barcelona that takes 500 years to build, and he was from there, and he was doing these designs, 1900 to 1925. And
very modern.
Couldn't get more modern than what was coming out of his brain.
Right.
And I do think it's interesting that the fascists are always against art. There's never the people who enforce brutality and violence are not the people who want art to thrive. It's
well.
What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure they wanted churches to thrive, but I don't know that much about it, so I'm not going to say.
Spain is a very Catholic country, and Franco and the fascists let the Catholics have their thing. They just were against modern design of any kind. So that's Antonio Gaudi. One of the next DVD we watched, because I get hummingbirds, I haven't seen them in a while. I think about 2 weeks ago was the last time I had seen the hummingbird, and it had been like maybe a month before I had seen one since that last sighting. But I made my balcony like a hummingbird garden, and I got these flowers, bushes, and plants that would attract hummingbirds. So after I ran out of the art DVDs, I went on Amazon and I was looking things up, and I found this DVD. And I'm probably the last of the DVD buyers, because I spoke to my girlfriend and she looked it up instantly when I told her how much I loved this movie. And it's only an hour long, but it's on YouTube if you want to watch this. And it's called First Flight, a mother hummingbird story. And we enjoyed the shit out of this.
We thought it was great. I did.
If you want to just be delighted for 50 minutes or however long this little film is, I think you'll enjoy the shit out of it. Me being obsessed with hummingbirds, I couldn't have loved this thing more. It
was a photographer that moved into a house. And his wife, a photographer, and his wife
in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas, she was.
I didn't know Vegas had hummingbirds.
She was Japanese, and he was American. And when they moved into the house, they said the people that lived before them had left a cardboard sign telling them that there was a hummingbird nest, and it had an arrow pointing to this clothesline in the porch. So the hummingbird made this nest on top of in the clothesline.
It was a clothesline.
On top of a clothespin. And it was on a porch, which is a pretty safe place for a bird to put a nest. It was a very small nest. Of course, hummingbirds are pretty small. And they filmed
3 inches long.
Yeah. They filmed this episode of how the mother bird showed.
Well, so the guy's a photographer.
Yes.
And he and his Japanese wife, they moved from New York City to Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
So they find out that they have this hummingbird
yes.
has nested on their clothesline in the back porch. So they set up all these cameras. And the guy used Canon cameras, and he set
yes.
up they just unbelievable camera shots of
Wonderful.
the life
yes.
of this hummingbird. And
they also used a special mirror on the ceiling to
the guy, I forget. He said regular mirrors give a green tinted reflection if you try and film through it. So he had some kind of I don't know if it was NASA or a military grade mirror that didn't have that problem. But
yes.
I loved how they showed the hummingbird made this tiny little nest, and it picked up all these like little feathery like flyaway seed looking things. and it was tiny, but it looked like such a soft little.
Well, it seemed to repair the nest by bringing the soft stuff and then tramping it down with its feet. It was kind of amazing to watch. And also that when the female bird laid the egg, it was quite big compared to her size.
They said that comparing it to a human, it would be like a woman giving birth to a 25-pound baby.
That's what they said.
That's because hummingbirds are only 3 inches long.
And the birds' eggs were like raisins. The
hummingbird egg is the size of a raisin.
So she laid one egg, then 2 days later she laid the other egg. So, and then while she sat on the egg, she would circulate the egg, make it, turn it around. Let's see. So
I love the
she would rotate the eggs in the nest.
It's worth watching this thing just to see those hummingbirds hatch. It was so beautiful, the way they like cracked out of those little, and you forget that it's the size of a raisin, that they're so tiny.
Because they really had close-ups.
And then the mother hummingbird, she's off eating insects, small insects, and then getting the pollen from flowers. And it said that she creates this like sweet mix in her stomach, and then she comes back and she regurgitates it to her babies. And then the hummingbird's beak or bill is like really long. And I didn't know until this thing that hummingbirds have these really long tongues. I guess it's for when they stick their beaks into the flower bells.
There's a lot of
and they can
flowers are like bells that they go into.
Yeah, and then they can just like flick their tongue and grab the sticky good stuff.
And it looked like it took the chicks 1.5 to 3 hours to crack the eggs. And it was funny to see them cracking the eggs. You could see the effort it must have taken to crack the eggs.
Being born is not an easy thing.
Not an easy thing, even for a bird. It was a really interesting story, and they filmed the mother showing the birds how to fly, and the nest was so small. I didn't see how the 2 birds could fit in there. They barely, they were growing kind of fast. I think in 3 weeks.
And they said sometimes they fall. Like when they're trying to fly.
When they were filming this, they seemed to have some cats.
They had cats that were underneath the hummingbird thing.
And once in a while, you'd see this cat running underneath the nest, and I thought, "Whoa, that cat is just waiting for one of these birds to fall out." But they made sure that they let everybody know that the cats were not allowed out without them being present. So
yeah, at the end they talked about how they filmed it.
Yes.
And they never let the cats be in there by themselves.
Right. And how it took them 3 years to film this.
No, it was 4 years.
Oh, 4.
And they said that they didn't know if it was the same bird that came back every year, but that it had an attitude of friendliness and familiarity where they think it was
the same
bird. But they never tagged the bird, so they can't be for sure. But they filmed it over a 4-year period.
And the bird seemed to...
And a hummingbird came back every year and gave babies there, gave birth there.
And it showed the hummingbird flying around the guy.
When he had this little Japanese kimono thing on. The bird just came and like kind of hooked onto his hip.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
I love it. I highly recommend that. I would, I'd say, skip the other ones we saw and watch the hummingbird thing.
Well, the other ones had something good to say about them too.
Yeah, no,
I like to see all the artwork. They kept showing you, they didn't spend much time on each one.
Matisse and Picasso was more about their lives and their rivalry and their friendship, where I think the Eugene Delacriox and the Toulouse Lautrec things we watched, I think those were made for like university art class or something, where they just mostly showed their paintings.
Right.
and they didn't really talk about their life at all. And then the Antonio Gaudi.
It was pretty interesting, though.
Yeah.
Really,
No, it's.
I wasn't bored. I mean, I thought they were pretty interesting.
But for lighthearted fare, I think the hummingbird story is something that people would really enjoy right now. And then we went full on animal for the rest of our. Now these are the last of the, because I want to watch nice, happy art things or educational things with my mom. The last two that I had left, I think we really knocked it out of the park.
Oh,
so the hummingbird thing
really
was great, and I just bought that off of Amazon. But these other two BBC documentaries that I've had for years, and I've never gotten to watch them. And the first one is BBC Birds of Paradise, and it's David Attenborough. So it's Attenborough's Birds of Paradise, I think is the exact title of it. And we loved it.
Yes, it was really, really well done.
Where they show those birds in New Guinea. You may or may not have seen it, but I could watch these things all day, or videos of them, where these birds, they'll like fold their feathers, and then it looks like they have a face with two eyes and a big smiley thing, and they're doing these dances. Go ahead, Mom. Tell me what you thought about it.
Well, it was they didn't even look like birds. And that's what he said. He was so amazed about these birds that they look so different.
Remember the one that would do this like long, stretchy thing?
Yes, it just
and it looked like it was like a floating black cloud.
Yeah, and you wouldn't even you had to have seen it to believe it. It was really, really.
So they were talking about that. In New Guinea, there's so much wild fruit and food that the mothers can easily feed the babies. So the male of these birds of paradise, all they have to do is work on mating, and their whole evolution is in attracting the female mate. And they even showed that one that was like shining the perch, because they like the females to be on like a perch above them so that they can do some dance.
They clean the perch so that the female will stand there, and the females are very plain-looking birds, where the males have
that's right.
Absolutely beautiful plumage, and that the natives use the plumage for currency by the Indians, and they also decorate their headdresses with them. So that's all Europeans ever knew from years and years ago. The first thing they said was Magellan. Okay, so he got 3 skins of these birds.
He brought it back.
And they didn't have any feet or wings. So people didn't know what they looked like. Nobody had seen these birds. And he died in the Philippines.
He was murdered by the natives.
In 1522. That's this expedition. So nobody had seen these birds live, and they didn't know how they were, and they couldn't figure out why they had no feet and no wings. So when they asked the natives about it, they made up some story, some myth about these birds.
That the bird flies so high it doesn't have a body or feet.
Or that it drank water from the clouds or something. And people actually believe this stuff that they made up. And then the painters try to figure out how they could possibly have looked by looking at these dried skins and the beautiful plumes. And they were finally they went to New Guinea. That's where they were, and they traded these plumes all the way to Southeast Asia, all around. And Attenborough, in 1957, made a TV series called Zoo Quest. I don't remember that, but yeah.
Well, it was probably on English television.
He was able to see one of these birds. And then 2 American scientists were able to film one of the species. It was dancing, a little black bird that was dancing on the ground.
Now, this is my favorite story. So this American film crew had gone there, and there's 36 species of 39 known species of birds of paradise, and they've spent years there, and they've filmed every one of them.
Yes.
And, David Attenborough had to go to them for their footage to get certain footage of some of the rarest ones, and they showed this one male bird, and so there's 6 female birds sitting up on a branch, and he's doing his dance, and then it's showing his dance, and his head is doing like a perfect figure 8, and they said that this male bird eventually mated with all 6 of these female birds who watched him do that dance that day. So, needless to say, the guy was a great dancer.
Must have been.
It worked on all of them.
So, in 2011, there were 18 expeditions to New Guinea, and they filmed every known species of birds of paradise in the wild. And it's illegal now to export these birds.
Well, another interesting fact was, you talking about the tribesmen, so they had all these elaborate headdresses with all these, beautiful plumage and feathers from these exotic birds of paradise. And they were saying that they were showing the tribal men doing their dances and everything. These tribal men in New Guinea are doing the exact same thing that the male birds of the birds of paradise are doing, that they're doing this elaborate dance all dressed up with colorful feathers because they want to be selected by the best females of their tribe. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, they put those two together. And it was interesting to know that in the Middle East, a sanctuary has been built by a collector in Qatar.
Oh yeah, some sheik.
Yes.
Has built, and this is in the hottest desert.
In the desert. Yeah.
In Qatar. This guy's built this tropical wonderland, and it's a breeding center for these birds.
And there's more than 90 birds of paradise there. So 2 times a day their food is delivered to each bird, and the food is guaranteed to improve breeding. And they showed this people doing it like a restaurant, where they carry these plates to these birds. And the eggs are so precious that they remove them from the nest and incubate them artificially. When they hatch, they had to be fed every 2 hours by hand.
They eat 160 kilos of papaya a week.
Whoa, 9 times a day for nearly 20 days. And the keeper whistles to get their attention, and they're in the incubator for about 3 weeks. What a lot of work they have to go through. By hand, they have to feed these little animals.
And they said that their biggest challenge there is getting the birds to mate without injuring themselves.
Yes.
What's other? Oh, I like to, so when we were talking about this, that they used to not know anything about these birds.
Yes.
Like first Magellan finds these the skins basically that were traded. And they tell the Europeans that it had no body and had no feet, and then they go back. And so they would have illustrators or painters that would come and paint them, and now we can have film crews film this stuff. And there was one illustrator or hunter, some English guy, who had first gone over there, and he drew them, made illustrations, and then he wrote about them. And he shot and killed one of them. And I wrote down this quote. He said, he's talking about this beautiful bird that he just killed. He was full of happiness. One flash from a gun, and all his joy is past.
Yes, all of a sudden he felt really bad about it.
He should have. Who could kill such a beautiful animal?
Well, it was pretty horrendous. And they had 2 male birds of paradise who spent their days practicing their dance. One of them would watch while the other one practiced dancing, and then they switched roles. They practiced their dance. Oh.
The ribbon-tailed birds of paradise. Those are the ones with the long white tail feathers. I'm not sure. They're like their tail feathers are 3 or 4 times their own length, and their only purpose is to impress the females.
Amazing.
That's this whole bird's biological function. Yes. Is to impress the females.
Well, I was wondering why their long feathers didn't catch on the trees as they were showing them flying around. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how that's possible either,
but they seem to glide.
We loved that one. And the next and last special thing that we watched is BBC Big Cats. All about big cats.
Well, it was big cats and small cats also.
Oh, yeah. There was some small
Cats,
ones. Like, here's one that you should Google. Probably one of the cutest cats. It's the sand cat kittens. Just Google sand cat kittens and feel your heart glow with happiness.
Well, the whole thing was very impressive, and we learned all kinds of stuff. Of course, the lions have been studied for years, so there was some new stuff about it.
Well, they said that the lions are the only social cat. Most of the other cats are solitary loners, and that the lions are hang out in groups. So because they're social, they find them to be the most intelligent.
Well, they had this theory that they probably were the most intelligent. So they showed this scientist who took orphan lions from birth, I guess, and he lived with them and became part of the pride. They call them prides when they're a little group. And it showed the guy rubbing his head against this lion.
Oh my God, that guy, I couldn't believe it. There's a man, a human being, who has become part of the pride.
And
the lion was rubbing on him.
I know, and he was rubbing on them. It was like...
Then they showed him by the water, and then he splashes water on his face. He's down. I couldn't believe it.
Like, he lives with them. So then they had a question how they could prove that the lion were more intelligent than most other cats. And so they decided to see if they could learn by watching. So what they decided to do, they made a big rectangle box with a door on one side, and they put in meat inside this box. So would the lion figure out how to open the door and get to the meat? And so the first lion they took out took like 20 minutes to open the door and get to the meat. So another lion that had been watching this was able... They put one lion in the cage, and the one that had been watching was let go, and it went to the door right away and opened it up, so they could learn by watching other cats. That was pretty interesting.
I really love this, and I highly recommend BBC Big Cats. Learn some things I'll never forget, and I never knew. Like in Central America, there's a jaguar. I thought cats didn't like water. I thought cats stayed out of water. So in Central America, there's jaguars that hunt fish, but also this jaguars in Central America hunt crocodiles. And they showed
that was amazing.
They showed this jaguar going through like the swamp. And I'm like, we're both like, I thought cats hated water.
Yeah,
and the thing is like stealthily moving through the swamp and marshy mangrove, and the jaguar goes into the swamp and grabs this crocodile by the throat and kills him, and then drags him up onto the dry land.
There it showed, it was as big as the crocodile. The cat was as big as the crocodile. And if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it.
I couldn't believe it. And then, in Costa Rica, and the jaguar's jaws are so strong, because you figure the alligators are really strong, and especially like when they grab people, it's not the bite. They usually like crush people and spin them around and twist them all up.
Put them under the water to drown them.
So I don't know why the crocodile didn't put up a bigger fight. I guess the jaguar is just such a badass that he can sneak in and grab his throat.
I was like, oh my God, I couldn't hardly believe it.
So they showed in Costa Rica these jaguars. Every year all these sea turtles come up on the beach, these massive sea turtles, and lay their eggs. And they had this like infrared night vision cameras that they film this stuff with.
Yeah, they called
that... the jaguar...
they call that a pantanal.
What
the one that killed the crocodile.
Oh, that's the name of the... Thanks, Mom. That's a pantanal jaguar.
No, a pantanal, not jaguar. They call it pantanal. That's the name of that cat.
Oh, okay. But in Costa Rica, this jaguar, his jaw is so strong it just crunches open this
turtle.
massive ancient turtle shell.
Yeah,
and eats them. I couldn't believe that either.
Believe that. Yeah, when the turtles come up to nest, that's when that.
The buffet is open.
Wow, yeah, it was pretty interesting, and they did say that all cats are curious and that their eyes are 6 times more sensitive than ours. Their hearing is better than ours, and so is their sense of smell. And like the one cat they had in the jungle, he builds a 3D map on the jungle in his head so he can find his way home.
And the pumas of Argentina eat penguins.
They were eating penguins. Jeez.
Wow.
That was interesting.
All cats are elusive and shy creatures and are notoriously hard to film. None more so than the snow leopard. The snow leopard of the Himalayas, I think,
that was really
what a
interesting.
really majestic, beautiful animal. And let me just stop real quick to say that I've started a Facebook group page to get the Himalayas to be called the all-gender layas. That was a joke, Mom.
Oh.
The Himalayas.
Sorry.
Get it? It's really
I see
shitty
what you
joke.
meant. Okay.
Anyway, the snow leopards of the Himalayas. If you can't watch this thing, you got to Google or watch videos of
Snow leopard.
And they're these cliffs and mountains, and it's just cool to think of these cats living these big ass, and they're the lonely cats. What was the spray thing?
They travel long distances and they follow their male who was trying to find a mate, and they spray on the rocks, and
they got their little scent.
She was saying that it's like this spray would give them their dating profile. So
it's got their entire DNA profile in it, and it's saying, and so they specialize in long distance mating. So if a female scent is on anything, they can spray their scent on top of it, and it sends a message to the ladies that they're available.
And they can do this 20 times an hour. So when when that particular snow leopard smelled a girl scent, he rubs his whole body over the scent, declaring his interest. And for male cats, it's a lonely existence. But female cats usually have babies to take care of, so
they're not alone. It's the male that's out by himself. The Canadian lynx in the Yukon eats snowshoe rabbits. I thought the Canadian lynx was one of the cutest of all of them.
A really pointy ears,
and then like a
hair
fuzzy
on
little butt tail, and kind of it looks like they're wearing fuzzy boots too.
They were cute. Yeah. It's like the researcher now getting all this information by putting cameras all over the place where they think they might find these animals, and so they record the animals as they go about their days, and that's how they study the behavior.
So in California we have bobcats, and they eat rabbits and small mammals. The fishing cats, and that's what it's called. It's called the fishing cat of Central America. That's the one those were cool to watch too, that just go into the edge of the water.
Yeah, and they have webbed feet.
They have webbed feet. Thanks, Mom. I forgot that.
Yeah, and they have 2 kinds of coats. They have 2 coats.
Like it kind of transforms underwater or something, right?
Well, it's like having one of those...
Like a wetsuit.
Wetsuit is what they said. Wow. Well, I never saw anything like that either. They showed this cat going in the water and catching a fish. And a mother cat trying to teach her 2 babies how to do it, which they did not do well.
That's cute.
But they said they'll be back tomorrow, I guess.
In Chile, there's the black-footed cat, and it's a tiny one, and it hunts moths and little birds. And it's 200 times lighter than a lion, and it hits its target 60% of the time.
Yeah.
So that makes that the black-footed cat the most lethal hunter of the entire cat family.
And they had a whole thing about Mumbai, India, where 20 million people live. They also have the highest population of leopards. And at night they come to the city to hunt. And livestock is abundant and unprotected. So they use stealth as their most effective weapon. Dogs provide an early warning system, but they are also on the menu.
Dogs are on the menu. So they showed these overpopulated areas of India, and the dogs would be barking. And so the leopards, they come into Mumbai, India, and so there's a lot of livestock that's left unprotected.
Yes.
Pigs and goats, and because they don't eat cows, but they said the dogs barking would warn people, and they showed with that infrared night camera these leopards sneaking into this. I mean, there's millions and millions of people that live in Mumbai.
Yes.
So how can the leopard slip into these neighborhoods and grab a pig or a goat?
Well, they were grabbing a dog
or
and
grab
pulling
a dog.
him over. And they said, well, from 1990 to 2013, 176 people were attacked. And in 2004, in just 1 month, 10 people were killed. So they started an education program letting people know that when you go outside, you should go in a group, and also to secure your animals. And hopefully that helped this, but boy.
Well, they showed that one guy, they said that he lost 3 dogs to leopards, and they said he came up with an interesting solution. So he had a white or beige dog, and his way of protecting the dog was he painted little leopard dots all over the thing. And what self-respecting dog wants to be dressed up like a cat?
Good grief.
That was interesting. The Borneo bay cat. What are some other ones? The Iberian lynx. That was the one of that was declared the rarest cat of all.
They had one swamp tigers.
Swamp tigers.
We know nothing about them, almost nothing about them. And when there's a low tide, it brings the animals to the shore to feed, and they have their whole life revolves around the tides. It's believed that there might be 100 of them in these islands, in India and Bangladesh.
Oh yeah, and then in Mongolia, way out in remote parts of Mongolia, it's called the Pallas's cat, and they can flatten their bodies and look like rocks.
And
remember that?
It showed that.
Yeah,
and it did look like a rock.
They look like rocks.
It did. It was amazing. And they said that their ear was close to the ground, and they did look like a rock. They could tuck its legs in, and it did look like a rock.
Yeah, and remember Johannesburg, east of Johannesburg, is this massive nuclear power plant, and there's tons of servals there. And they showed them. Did you have any?
Yes, and that was interesting because, it's such a secret place that they had cameras all around, and people had been complaining that they saw strange animals roaming around there at night. So ecologists started studying it, and they found these servals, and there's 6 times more of them living in that little wilderness than in the wilderness. And it's because the area is fenced in, and there are no predators that can get in there. And near the water were used to cool the power plant's equipment. Rodents live so that they have a large supply of food. And that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was cool. This massive nuclear power plant east of Johannesburg in South Africa has become this perfect habitat for these servals, and the rodents attracted to the water, and they got tons of food to eat, so they've been able to study these servals like they never have before.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting.
One thing I liked, the sentence that they kept saying about the big cats, the cat family, they kept saying it's one family with 40 different faces. All the different, because there's 40 different species of cats.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And they really are pretty different from each other. And in Borneo, a scientist was taking, that was the red cat. He was taking a break on a log, and all of a sudden a red cat went by him. He drew the cat and asked the natives about this cat, and he found out it was a rare sight, and he spent 2 years trying to get videos of this cat by putting cameras all around, and he only got 2 videos out of 2 years. He did find that Borneo had the highest deforestation in the world, that they chopped the forest down to plant palm oil plantations. And
palm oil is really horrendous shit. It's cheaper than cooking oil or vegetable oil, and all over Indonesia. Also, they've made tons of these, palm oil plantations. It's really terrible for.
They're the greatest threat to all these animals.
Yeah, and it's the cheapest, shittiest way you can cook too. So.
Camera traps are challenging what we know about mountain lions, pumas. The males are not as aggressive towards females as they had believed, and they become actually meek when they share a meal. And they seem to remember each other and not lead solitary lives that they thought they did. And so then they had a whole part where they said, we can change the future of cats if we're willing to help. There's a tiger conservation society that is trying to get money to compensate farmers when tigers kill their farm animals. 95% of wild tigers have been wiped out in the last 100 years.
Oh, yeah, and then they said, and this is a fact that I've read this many times in the last few years, that there are more tigers living in private zoos in the United States than actually live in the wild. I think that's a pretty common fact that most people know now. But so, there was that Netflix show where the guy's in Florida or Louisiana, and he's got his own little tiger zoo, and there's a lot of rich people with tigers and zoos in their backyard.
It's kind of crazy, but so in Spain there was a whole group that's trying to rescue
That's the Iberian lynx.
Iberian lynx. The territory was Spain and Portugal, and the habitat loss and the lack of prey, overhunting, and there's now fewer than 100 of them are left. It's the rarest one on the planet. So they are working in an intensive breeding programs, and they cater to every need that these cats have. And I thought was interesting, they had cameras all around to make sure that the cubs never meet a human. The scientists are working to improve their natural habitats so they can reintroduce them to the wild. And we watched as 2 cats were reintroduced to the wild, a male and a female. And then, do you remember that guy about the cheetahs? They are the fastest cats.
Cheetahs are the fastest animal on the planet.
They excel faster than a Ferrari.
They can accelerate faster than a Ferrari. Wow.
When you think about that, it's pretty fast.
And then their ankles turn not all the way. The one that, what was the one that it turns 180 degrees?
It was one that was moving down.
There's one
was in the jungle.
One in the jungles that their ankles turn 180 degrees.
Yes, and they could
so
go
they can
down
walk down trees.
Trees, that was interesting.
But also they were showing the cheetah ankle, because the cheetahs, prey never runs in a straight line.
Right.
So the cheetah's got to constantly be shifting and changing direction.
The tail keeps them from
falling over.
But
their big, long tails spin in the directions to keep them balanced.
Yes, that was interesting. And some scientists had built his own plane, learned how to fly, and filled the plane with the latest gadgets to track cheetahs. They can go hundreds of miles and track them by these colors. Then they record the movements 300 times a second, which downloads to the equipment. This guy tracked 500 hunts, and so that they could reach 58 miles an hour, but that most of their hunts were not about how fast they could go. It was about the agility of the cheetahs that really counts. And since they love to chase a moving lure, the guy had set up.
It was like a little robot
site.
What do they call it? Like a big long string.
It was a robot that must have been, they put smell or meat or something there, and the cheetahs, you saw two cheetahs trying to catch this robot going along.
And they filmed beautiful footage of the cheetah running after this thing.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Where like all four of its legs were off the ground at once, remember that?
Yeah, and they could change directions really fast. So it isn't that they can go so fast, it's that they're so agile. It was really interesting.
Yeah, and it was a great way for them to end that. It was a 3-hour series, so it was 3 1-hour episodes, and they ended the whole thing on the cheetahs.
Yeah.
So they start with lions and end with cheetahs. It's and we learned so much.
Yeah, there are so many different kinds of cats. They're everywhere.
Well, you know, when I lived with Natalie in San Francisco, we had a cat, and it would, you know, we'd have the windows open, and there was this. Remember that the church was next door to me.
Yes.
But between my apartment and the church was like this lower, kind of 5-foot gravel roof area that, you know, you could go out.
I didn't notice that too well, but go ahead.
Well, I'm painting the picture for you and everyone. So the pigeons would come down and land on this thing. So the cat in my window would be above it, and that cat would sit there. It had these feline instincts that it would sit there. And I used to tell Natalie, we're going to eat the cat's first kill out of respect. I was joking, but it never got one. But that it never gave up, and it was just such a true hunter in its DNA that's all that cat was interested in was either lying in the sun or trying to catch one of these pigeons. And it was just so stealthy the way it would try and sneak up on it. So
they had. They did show some cat in California that was learning how to catch these gulls, and at first.
Oh, the seagulls! Yeah. That was really cool. I really liked that.
Yeah. So at first it didn't seem to do too well, but then after a while he got how to do this.
Yeah, and it kept refining its technique, and then I remember it was like it would jump, so it could try and swat him out of the air.
That was
pretty awesome.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, what was that? That's the California bobcat.
Yes.
That hunts the seagulls.
Yeah,
we learned a lot of good things. It's wonderful learning all these great things with you, Mom.
It's hard to keep track of exactly what cat did what, but I never would have believed cats would go and fishing and stuff.
Yeah, or catching a crocodile or ripping open a turtle shell.
That was interesting.
So we've reached the end of all of my educational programs. How do you feel, Mom? Do you feel smarter? You feel your brain is heavier?
But it's nice to see all this interesting stuff. To file away for future reference. Although somebody that hasn't seen the film might find it hard to believe,
Yeah, well, I think especially the animal things we watched.
Yeah.
The
Birds
and the
of
Matisse
Paradise.
Picasso, but I love the hummingbird story, Birds of Paradise, and Big Cats. Yes. That was real quality entertainment for this past weekend watching this stuff. So just to give everybody an update about myself, my album that I recorded last year on my UK tour should be done in the next month. There was like a month where everything was put on hold because my editor in Philadelphia, his wife had a baby, so he's been a new dad for the last month. So understandably, you got to cut somebody some slack, and but now he's back on it. So I hope to finish my new album by the end of the month, and then also my book about my best travel stories, traveling the world. it looks like I'm a step closer to having that finished.
Yes, my goodness.
I'm almost finished with the Peru story, and my friend Gilbert King, who won the Pulitzer Prize for his book The Devil in the Grove. I've had him on this podcast. I started doing open mic nights with him in Orlando 36 years ago, and he's been helping me prepare it for the book proposal. So I'm going to finish my Peru story this week, and then next week we're going to start working on the book proposal. Ashna had helped me with the first edits of things, and then now Gil is helping me get the proposal ready. So I'm kind of excited, and these past 4 months have been...
I'm excited for you.
They've been very... well, you've seen me sitting here doing all the work. So the exciting thing is that these past 4 months have been very fruitful for me in all the work that I'm doing. So wherever you're at in the world, I hope life is treating you good. Hopefully you're not hurting financially or emotionally or any way whatsoever. And I wish you the best. And we're going to be taking trips this week. So next week, my mom and I will talk about our adventures around California.
Yes.
Do you have any words of wisdom or anything you'd like to say to the people on the way out?
Just keep your eyes open for all the wonderful surprises that the world has. We sure have seen so many beautiful plants just in the neighborhood.
Just in the neighborhood, yeah. Even without the things we've been watching, these
just
daily walks through the neighborhood have been...
taking loads of photos. Hopefully I can paint some sooner or later.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for that Picture This app, which my girlfriend has, I'm not even using it. I'm texting her the photos, and she puts it in, and then she tells us what the flowers or trees are. That's...
we find out
20 years ago, we wouldn't have
known
known that that's an African tulip
on
Martel Avenue, and people should go look out for it.
That rare tree across the street.
The Monterey Cypress.
Monterey Cypress.
There's a bunch of Monterey Cypresses in Pan Pacific Park.
Isn't that the most amazing thing?
Beautiful, beautiful.
They also have several other trees there that are pretty interesting. The China tree. China silk tree.
The China silk tree. And you're talking about the Persian silk tree. It's the Persian silk tree. That's the other one that's our favorite.
Yeah.
The African tulip,
beautiful.
the Persian silk tree, and the Monterey Cypress.
Yes.
I think those are our top 3 trees. Cool. Okay, Mommy, do you want to blow everybody a big kiss?
Oh, goodness.
I'm so happy that you're here with me, Mom,
Well,
and experiencing all this with me.
Yes, me too, actually. I'm having a good time.
And I love you with all my heart, and I'm going to be
Thank you.
very sad when you have to go back to Florida.
Yeah, no more hugs.
No more hugs.
We'll be by
I got to
ourselves.
fill my camel hump with mother love and mother hugs.
Me too.
Okay, long may you run, everybody, and shalom amigos amigas.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend, you should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.